Chosen one, have you ever wondered why certain doors slammed shut right when you were about to walk through them? Why people you trusted suddenly changed their minds? Why what looked like favor turned to ashes in your hands? It wasn't random. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't failure. It was protection. God blocked it, not because you weren't good enough, but because it was never worthy of who you are in Him. You've been weeping over a no, but heaven was shouting, you deserve more. So sit with me now and let the Spirit reveal what your soul already knows deep down. That thing you wanted so badly, it was beneath your calling. Chosen one, the reason it hurt so much when they walked away, when the opportunity vanished, when the relationship crumbled, was because your spirit felt the loss before your mind could understand the redirection. You were looking at the surface, but God saw the soul of the matter. He saw who you would become if you settled. He saw how your light would be dimmed if you stayed. He saw how your voice would be silenced, how your identity would be buried, how your joy would be drained, all for the sake of fitting into a life too small for your anointing. That's why He blocked it. It looked like rejection, but it was elevation wrapped in disappointment. It felt like betrayal, but it was divine preservation in disguise. You see, chosen one, when you carry oil on your life, you can't just walk into anything. You can't just sit at any table. You can't just say yes to anything that claps for you. Because when God has set you apart, He doesn't just measure by appearance. He measures by assignment. And what you were chasing would have pulled you out of alignment. So He blocked it, not to punish you, but to position you. You asked for peace, but peace wouldn't survive in that place. You asked for love, but love wouldn't thrive in that atmosphere. You asked for growth, but growth would have suffocated under their limitations. So He tore it down before it could build you a prison disguised as a blessing. That's how much He loves you. That's how fiercely heaven protects those who don't even realize they're warriors in training. Chosen one, I need you to understand. What you thought was your destination was only a distraction. You were weeping over temporary comfort, but God was preparing you for eternal impact. You were praying for acceptance, but He was preparing you for authority. You were chasing validation, but He was forging you in the fires of isolation. Because what's coming is bigger than your feelings. What's coming requires clarity, strength, and purity. So He had to sever the things that would contaminate your calling. He had to shut the mouths that would plant doubt. He had to block the paths that would reroute your destiny. And yes, it hurt. Yes, it was confusing. Yes, you cried in secret, wondering if something was wrong with you. But chosen one, you weren't being punished. You were being protected. You were being purified. You were being set apart for something that would have never fit inside the box they wanted to keep you in. You weren't called to be liked. You were called to be light. And that's why they couldn't stay. That's why the door slammed shut. That's why the deal fell through. Because God knew if He didn't intervene, you would have lowered your crown just to be held. You would have shrunk yourself just to be understood. You would have traded royalty for comfort. And that would have been the real tragedy. So He blocked it. He disrupted the illusion before it seduced you into settling. He removed their hand from your life before it drained your fire. He tore down the bridge before it led you to compromise. Because your calling is not casual. Your anointing is not optional. Your life is not average, and deep down, you've always known this. You've always felt the weight. Even as a child, you noticed things others ignored. You felt things more deeply. You cried for reasons no one could explain. You were misunderstood, not because you were broken, but because you were built different. Built to carry what others couldn't. Built to speak what others wouldn't. Built to stand when others bowed. And that kind of design, it demands divine detours. So, yes, chosen one, God blocked it. And maybe they called you too much. Maybe they said you were too sensitive, too distant, too intense. But that's only because they didn't have access to your blueprint. They didn't hear the whisper in the midnight hours. They didn't feel the burning in your chest. They didn't watch you wrestle with God behind closed doors, begging Him to let you have what your flesh wanted, only to be met with silence. But now, you know why. Now you see it clearer. If He had said yes back then, you would have missed the version of you that's rising now. The healed you, the fire-tested you, the wise, bold, spiritually grounded you. That's who He's been protecting all along. So let go of the bitterness. Let go of the regret. Let go of the false guilt. It didn't work out because it wasn't worthy. Not because you weren't enough. In fact, you were too much for them, for it, for that space, for that season. And that's not arrogance. That's clarity. You were too called to pretend you weren't. Too favored to be bound by their opinions. Too anointed to stay where the Spirit had already left. So God blocked it. Because beneath all the pain and confusion, He was writing a better story. And you, chosen one, are still right on time. Chosen one, sometimes God's no is louder than thunder. But most times, it's a soft, quiet closing. So gentle you question whether it was even Him. You revisit the memory again and again, replaying the moment they stopped calling, the door that never opened, the opportunity that vanished. And in your heart, you whisper, "What did I do wrong?" But hear me now. You didn't do anything wrong. You did everything right. And because of that, God had to block what was beneath you. Because the enemy doesn't just tempt you with darkness. He tempts you with distractions that look like light. Not everything that glitters is God. Not every admirer is an assignment. Not every open door is divine. So when you prayed, "God, use me," He answered. But not with applause or recognition. He answered with pruning. He removed the things that would have diluted your destiny. And it felt like loss. But it was actually gain in disguise. Because sometimes the greatest deliverance doesn't come from demons being cast out, but from dreams being rerouted. God saved you from success that would have ruined you. He saved you from love that would have caged you. He saved you from influence that would have inflated your ego and starved your soul. Chosen one, when you're spiritually set apart, you can't afford to be careless with your yes. You can't afford to link arms with just anyone, because your presence shifts atmospheres. Your discernment pierces darkness. Your prayers open portals. And the enemy knows. If he can't destroy you, he'll distract you. If he can't stop you, he'll try to stall you. That's why you felt spiritual warfare even in the smallest decisions. That's why your peace has been under attack. That's why confusion tried to cloud your clarity. Because the calling you carry is holy. It's weighty. It's dangerous to hell. And because of that, you've been fought silently, deeply, constantly. But still, you rise. Still, you discern. Still, You walk with reverence. And because of that, chosen one, God is proud of you. Not because of your perfection, but because of your pursuit. Because while others settled, you stayed sensitive. While others compromised, you craved consecration. While others ran after platform, you remained at his feet. And that posture is what kept you covered when you didn't even know you needed to be. Some people only came into your life to serve as confirmation of where not to go. Some relationships were meant to last just long enough to remind you of your worth. Some doors were never meant to open, because what waited behind them would have changed the shape of your spirit. And though it hurt to see them walk away, though it ached to watch the curtain close, it was never rejection. It was redirection. It was mercy. It was the hand of God pulling you higher, because if he let you have what you wanted, you would have missed what you needed. You wanted affection, but he knew you needed alignment. You wanted closure, but he knew you needed freedom. You wanted clarity, but he was building character. That's why it felt like silence. That's why you questioned if he still saw you. Because he was doing deep work, surgical work, cutting soul ties you didn't realize had wrapped around your purpose. And every time he cut something loose, it stung, but the sting was healing. The loss was holy. The tears were sacred. You weren't being abandoned. You were being refined. Chosen one, you've been trained in hiddenness. Your growth wasn't loud. Your obedience wasn't public, but it was seen. Every time you turned away from compromise, heaven took note. Every time you bit your tongue instead of lashing back, the Spirit smiled. Every time you chose honor over revenge, you were being shaped into someone the enemy fears. You're not just gifted, you're guarded. You're not just anointed, you're appointed. And because of that, the bar is higher for you. You can't play with what others normalize. You can't entertain what others flirt with. You can't pretend when your spirit screams the truth. And yes, that's a lonely road. Yes, it often feels like you're misunderstood, mislabeled, misplaced. But you were never meant to blend in. You were always meant to stand out. Not for pride, but for purpose. You are set apart, handpicked, marked by fire, carrying an assignment that can't be contaminated by lesser things. And that's why God keeps blocking what looks good, but isn't good for you, because your discernment is too sharp to be dulled by distractions, because your calling is too urgent to be delayed by detours, because your soul is too costly to be entangled with cheap approval. Chosen one, it's okay to grieve what you thought would work out. Let the tears fall. Let the memories rise. But don't stay there. Don't let what God blocked become your idol. Don't build altars to what God removed. There's a future ahead of you that demands your full focus, and you can't afford to keep glancing back at what was never meant to be permanent. That no wasn't the end of your story. It was the setup for the part where heaven breathes fresh wind into your lungs, the part where divine connections replace counterfeit bonds, the part where oil flows from the places that used to bleed, the part where your testimony becomes someone else's lifeline. So walk boldly, even when your heart still limps. Speak truth, even when your voice shakes. Love again, even after betrayal. Because you, chosen one, are still being led by the Spirit, who blocked what would have buried you, and what's ahead is holy ground. Chosen one, I know there are nights when your soul trembles with unspoken questions. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the ache in your chest will ever fully heal. You scroll past old conversations. You revisit places that used to feel like home. And deep in your spirit, there's a quiet war between the voice that tells you to move on and the wound that begs you to make sense of what happened. But hear me clearly. You don't have to understand everything to trust that God is still good. You don't need every answer to believe that the pain had purpose. What you need is to release what God already released you from. Because the longer you carry what He blocked, the heavier your calling will feel. Chosen one, some things God removed, not because they were evil, but because they were ordinary. And you weren't called to live an ordinary life. You were born to walk in the extraordinary. You were designed to provoke heaven's movement on earth. So the moment your spirit began to outgrow the space you were in, heaven stepped in, not to destroy you, but to free you. Free you from the cycle of almost. Free you from the trap of good enough. Free you from the fear of being alone. Because sometimes we cling to what's familiar just because it fills a void. But God doesn't want you to be temporarily comforted. He wants you to be eternally fulfilled. And that requires a holy separation, a sacred pulling away, a divine disruption that feels like death before it feels like deliverance. That's why you couldn't make it work, even when you tried. That's why you lost the taste for things that used to excite you. That's why their words stopped resonating and their presence started draining you. It wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual, because your soul was shifting, your spirit was ascending, your hunger was changing, and when your hunger shifts, everything around you must either rise with you or fall away. Chosen one, what fell away wasn't your loss. It was God's pruning, and pruning isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's heaven whispering, there's more peace, more purpose, more alignment, more anointing. But you can't carry that kind of glory with hands full of compromise. You can't walk in that kind of power while entertaining things that make you question your worth. So, God had to clear the room. He had to cleanse the stage. He had to turn the lights off so you could hear His voice without the noise of their applause. Because applause fades, but calling endures. Chosen one, you're not crazy for feeling like your soul is out of place in most rooms. You're not broken for crying over things others shrugged off. You're not weak for longing for something deeper. That's what it means to be marked. You were born with a spiritual sensitivity that confuses people who only live on the surface. But that sensitivity is your strength. It's your superpower. It's the reason you see things before they happen. It's why you feel burdens that don't belong to you. It's why your presence agitates those who pretend. Because light exposes, truth convicts, and your very existence is a reminder that there's more to life than performance and popularity. So, of course they backed away. Of course the invitation never came. Of course the relationship collapsed. You weren't being overlooked. You were being hidden. Hidden so that no one could reduce your value to how useful you are to them. Hidden so that no one could twist your purity into something transactional. Hidden so that when you emerge, it's not from the hands of man, but from the refining fire of God. Chosen one, every season of loneliness you walked through wasn't wasted. Every tear that hit your pillow was counted. Every moment you felt invisible was seen by the only one who truly matters. Because while they ignored your presence, heaven was preparing your platform. And I don't mean a stage. I mean the kind of platform where your wisdom becomes someone's rescue, the kind of platform where your scars become sacred testimonies, the kind of platform where your very story becomes a key that unlocks others from cages they didn't know they were trapped in. But you couldn't get there holding hands with what was beneath your destiny. You had to be stripped. You had to be emptied. You had to be disappointed by what you thought would satisfy you, so that when God fills you, there's no confusion about where the glory belongs. It was never them. It was always Him. Chosen one, you were not born to chase. You were born to carry peace in chaotic rooms, to carry truth in a world addicted to lies, to carry fire in places that have gone cold. But you cannot carry glory and grief at the same time. You cannot hold on to yesterday and expect to step fully into tomorrow. You must decide, will you trust the block, or will you keep begging for what heaven already canceled? It's time to release. Release the guilt. Release the fantasy. Release the false hope that maybe if you had done one thing differently, they would have stayed. No, chosen one. They left because your spirit was too heavy for their hands. They walked away because your destiny intimidated their dysfunction. They rejected you because they couldn't use you, and God allowed it because He would rather you be lonely and aligned than surrounded and stuck. He would rather you walk alone with clarity than be loved by many and lose your voice. So walk on with tears in your eyes if you must. Walk on even when your heart still remembers their name. Walk on knowing that the pain you feel now is far lighter than the bondage you were rescued from, because what's ahead of you is holy, and you, chosen one, were never meant to bow to what was beneath you. Chosen one, there's something sacred about being misunderstood, something powerful about not being chosen by the world, because it means you were reserved for something higher. I know it stings when people misread your silence as weakness, your humility as uncertainty, your purity as naivety, but they don't see the war you've survived. They don't hear the prayers you've whispered between sobs. They don't know how many times you said yes to God while bleeding quietly on the inside. And that's the thing. Your process was private, but your purpose will be public. That's why He blocked it. Because He wasn't just preparing the blessing, He was preparing you. He was shaping your spirit into something that can't be seduced by temporary applause. He was teaching you how to love without losing yourself, how to serve without becoming a slave to others' expectations, how to walk in boldness without needing constant affirmation. Chosen one, you've been through too much to pretend you're average. The oil on your life came at a cost. The wisdom you carry was bought with tears. The discernment you walk in was forged in the fire of betrayal, and you cannot apologize for that. You cannot lower your voice just to make others feel comfortable in their complacency. You were blocked because God was building a boundary around your brilliance. Not everyone is meant to handle your vulnerability. Not everyone is meant to sit at your table. Not everyone deserves access to the sacred spaces within you. So if they left, let them. If it ended, bless it. If the season shifted, release it. Because when God removes something, it's never subtraction. It's sacred strategy. You prayed for alignment, and alignment requires the removal of anything that causes imbalance. You prayed for destiny, and destiny demands detachment from distraction. You prayed for discernment, and discernment comes with the ache of realizing who's not truly for you. That's what this season has been. Divine exposure. Not to break you, but to reveal what was always there beneath the surface. So don't resent the clarity. Don't grieve the goodbye. Don't curse the closed door. Thank God for it. Because sometimes the most loving thing God can do is say no. No to what feeds your fear. No to what strokes your ego. No to what mimics love but lacks covenant. And yes to what cultivates your growth. Yes to what honors your soul. Yes to what protects your calling. Yes to what lifts your spirit and sharpens your focus. But first, he had to block the counterfeit. Because chosen one, when you're carrying something eternal, you can't afford to waste your life on what's only seasonal. You can't keep watering dead roots. You can't keep begging God to resurrect what he buried for your sake. That relationship, that job, that community, that version of you, it had to go. Not because it was all bad, but because it wasn't best. And when you're chosen, God will never let you settle for good when he designed you for great. You've got to stop apologizing for your evolution. You've got to stop mourning the pieces he pried from your hands. You've got to stop wondering if it could have worked if you just tried harder. Because if it was from God, you wouldn't have had to beg to be seen. You wouldn't have had to shrink to be loved. You wouldn't have had to silence your truth to keep their peace. That wasn't partnership. That was performance. That wasn't purpose. That was pain in disguise. And God saw what you didn't. He saw how small you were becoming in order to maintain their comfort. He saw how much of yourself you were hiding just to avoid their judgment. He saw how tired your soul was getting, trying to convince them that you were worth choosing. And he said, "No more. Not my chosen one. Not the one I called in the womb. Not the one I set apart in the wilderness. Not the one I anointed when no one else was looking." So he blocked it. He tore it down. He emptied your hands. And now, even though they're still shaking, they're free. Free to receive what's real. Free to embrace who you are without fear of rejection. Free to rest in the assurance that you don't have to strive to be seen by the God who made you. Chosen one, you are walking into a season where what left won't even compare to what's coming. What he's building in you now is deeper, richer, stronger. The roots are going down in secret so the fruit can endure in public. He's not rushing this. He's not scrambling. He's not unsure. He's precise. He's intentional. He's holy. And so is the process. So if it's still quiet, wait in peace. If it's still painful, heal in faith. If it's still lonely, lean into the solitude and listen. Because in that stillness, heaven is whispering new instructions. God is giving you fresh blueprints. The Spirit is recalibrating your compass because your next step isn't just about you. It's about every soul connected to your obedience. There are lives attached to your yes. There are destinies hanging on your healing. There are generations waiting for you to stand fully in your assignment. So don't go back. Don't chase what God blocked. Don't try to repair what was never rooted in him. Let it be. Let him finish what he started. Because what's on the other side of this breaking is glory. And you, chosen one, were born for glory. Chosen one, if you could see what God sees when he looks at you, you would stop questioning why he blocked what you thought you needed. You would stop mourning the counterfeit and start preparing for the crown. Because he doesn't just see your past, he sees your potential. He sees the oil flowing from your wounds. He sees the purity beneath your pain. He sees the strength forged in secret when no one was clapping, when no one was calling, when no one cared, except him. You were never forgotten. You were being formed in the fire, in the silence, in the exile. You thought you were being punished, but you were being purified. You thought you were disqualified, but you were being qualified. You thought you were being delayed, but you were being refined. Chosen one, God wasn't just blocking what was beneath your calling. He was building what would carry it. He was building endurance. He was building clarity. He was building spiritual authority that isn't swayed by emotions or opinions. And now, He's calling you to rise above the noise, to rise above the trauma, to rise above the whispers of the past and the lies of the enemy. Because you're not who they said you were. You're not your failures. You're not the heartbreak. You are not the silence of those who didn't show up. You are the evidence of God's hand in motion. You are the proof that what tried to break you only birthed deeper surrender. You are the living testimony that rejection can be the door to revelation. So walk boldly now, not in arrogance, but in awareness. Awareness that you've been through fire and didn't burn. Awareness that you've been betrayed and still chose to bless. Awareness that you've been emptied just to be filled with something holy. You carry a sacred kind of strength, chosen one, the kind this world doesn't understand, the kind that doesn't come from platforms or titles, the kind that comes from being shattered and rebuilt by God's own hands. You walk in a depth that frightens shallow hearts. You carry a weight that repels counterfeit connections. And that's why the block had to happen, because the real you, the called you, the destined you, was suffocating in places God never sent you. And when He loves you, He won't let you stay where your spirit starves. He won't let you thrive in something that only survives because of your effort alone. He won't let you pour endlessly into vessels that were never designed to carry your overflow. So He blocked it, because He saw you clinging to something you prayed for out of desperation, not destiny. And He knew if He didn't intervene, you'd miss the miracle that required your full surrender. So now, it's time. Time to bless what didn't bless you. Time to release what you never really had. Time to forgive even the unanswered questions. Time to stop rehearsing the what-ifs and start walking into the what's next. Because your spirit was not built to linger in limbo. It was built to soar. And though your wings may still feel heavy from the last season, they are healing. They are mending in the presence of God. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not broken beyond repair. You are right where heaven needs you to be, wiser, softer, stronger, and the very pain you thought would crush you has become your confirmation. The suffering wasn't pointless. The silence wasn't wasted. The waiting wasn't in vain. Every moment has been counted. Every tear has been kept. Every heartbreak has been transformed into a holy offering. You are not who you were before the block. You're deeper now, cleaner, braver. You know the voice of God now, not just in the wind, but in the whisper. Not just in the miracle, but in the morning. Not just in the open door, but in the slammed ones too. Because chosen one, your eyes have seen too much to ever settle again. Your ears have heard too much truth to entertain lies again. Your spirit has tasted too much glory to chase crumbs again. You've crossed over. You've come through. And what awaits you now is abundance. Not the kind the world gives. Not the kind that depends on applause. But the kind of abundance that fills your soul, even when your hands are empty. The kind that steadies your heart even when storms rage. The kind that doesn't require performance, just presence. So return to His presence. Return to the secret place. Return to the altar where you first said, "Here I am, Lord. Use me." Because He's still using you, even through the brokenness, even through the fear, even through the shaking. Especially through the shaking, you are being positioned for divine release. You are being called into assignments that only your scars can speak to. You are being trusted with truth that only your tears have made room for. So don't look back. Don't settle again. Don't apologize for your oil. Don't doubt your design. You were chosen, and God blocked what was beneath you so He could unleash what was buried within you. And now, it's time to rise. Chosen one, let me tell you something the enemy never wanted you to realize. What was blocked didn't break you. It birthed you. It birthed a version of you that you didn't even know existed. A version of you that no longer begs to be seen, but simply is. A version of you that no longer chases peace, but carries it. A version of you that no longer pleads for love, but understands that you are deeply, irrevocably loved by the one who never leaves. You became that through the fire, through the disappointment, through the divine no. Because the most powerful version of a chosen one isn't the one who gets everything they want. It's the one who survives everything they didn't ask for and still says, "God, I trust you." That's you. You trusted Him when nothing made sense. You kept praying even when heaven felt silent. You kept sowing kindness when all you reaped was rejection. You kept showing up when your heart was shattered, and heaven took note. Heaven recorded every act of obedience in the midst of heartbreak. Every time you forgave when you wanted revenge. Every time you loved when you wanted to hide. Every time you chose truth, even when it cost you everything. That's why you're dangerous now. Not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful. Not because you're perfect, but because you're purified. Not because you're loud, but because you're anchored. You've become immovable in the spirit, unshakable in your convictions, and the gates of hell tremble when someone like you wakes up and realizes, "I'm still here, and I'm still chosen." Chosen one, it's time to rise, not just from the pain, but into the promise. You can't dwell in survival mode when God is calling you into revival mode. You didn't come this far just to heal. You came this far to build, to reclaim, to establish what the enemy tried to destroy in seed form, because that's what he was after all along. Not the job, not the relationship, not the status. He was after the seed of your joy, the seed of your calling, the seed of your legacy. But here's the truth. He failed. He didn't destroy the seed. He activated it. He didn't cancel your calling. He confirmed it. He didn't silence your voice. He sharpened it. Now your prayers carry authority. Your presence shifts rooms. Your eyes discern quickly. Your boundaries speak without words. You walk differently because you know now. You know what it cost. You know what was lost. And you know what it means to rise again, not as who you used to be, but as who God has always seen. That's why the enemy trembles when you worship, because your worship isn't performance, it's warfare. It comes from a place of deep survival, from nights you cried out and nobody knew, from moments you wanted to quit but somehow stayed, from days when your hands were trembling but you still lifted them anyway. That kind of worship breaks chains. And now, chosen one, you are the chain breaker, the curse breaker, the pattern breaker, the one who sees through the lies and lives by truth, the one who holds light in dark places, the one who walks in rooms and makes demons nervous, not because you shout, but because you carry stillness that unsettles the noise. Because what was blocked didn't kill your fire, it purified it. What was blocked didn't steal your vision, it sharpened your focus. What was blocked didn't make you less worthy, it revealed how sacred your worth really is. And I need you to hear this. You didn't miss it. You didn't mess up your destiny. You didn't delay your breakthrough beyond recovery. You didn't fail too deeply for redemption. You didn't lose anything that God cannot restore in ways that are better than you ever imagined. So stand up now, not in shame, but in surrender, not in fear, but in fullness, not in doubt, but in divine confidence, because your story is not over. It's just beginning in the right direction. You spent so long mourning what you thought you lost, but God is about to blow your mind with what you're about to gain. Peace that doesn't depend on people, joy that doesn't shift with circumstances, provision that doesn't make sense in the natural, divine encounters that confirm everything you've carried in silence. And you'll look back and say, "Thank you, God, for every closed door. Thank you for every no. Thank you for blocking what would have buried me. Because now you see it. Now you feel it. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. You weren't forgotten. You were being hidden for the appointed time. And chosen one, that time is now. Chosen one, the weight you've carried wasn't just for your survival. It was preparation for your release. You didn't walk through rejection, isolation, and inner warfare just to be strong. You were being readied for a move of God that would touch lives through your obedience. You are not merely a survivor of storms. You are the storm the enemy feared would rise. That's why you've been fought so hard. That's why hell came for your peace, your mind, your confidence, your voice. Because when a chosen one knows who they are, everything shifts. And now, the shift is here. But let me tell you a holy secret. Sometimes, when you're this close to stepping into the fullness of your destiny, the enemy whispers louder than ever. He throws doubt like darts. He sends people to poke your old wounds. He tries to resurrect shame that no longer belongs to you. Why? Because he knows he can't stop the promise. So he tries to convince you you're not worthy of it. But you are, not because of what you've done, but because of what you've survived. Not because you got it all right, but because you surrendered even when it felt like defeat. You passed tests no one saw. You kept showing up when it would have been easier to disappear. You chose to believe when believing hurt. And that belief, that childlike, trembling, gut-level faith, is what pulled you through when logic failed. So don't let go now. Don't disqualify yourself from the very promise you've been purified to carry. Don't let weariness talk you out of the reward that was written in heaven with your name on it. Chosen one, you've walked through fire, but you didn't smell like smoke. You've sat in silence, but your spirit didn't go numb. You've been crushed, but not broken, stripped, but not stolen, tested, but not torn apart. Why? because you were never walking alone. God was with you in the heartbreak, in the dark nights, in the whispers you didn't have words for. He held your soul when no one else noticed your trembling hands. He collected your tears like treasure. He numbered your sighs when your prayers dried up. He stood between you and destruction and said, "Not this one. This one is mine." And now, He's calling you forward, not just to walk healed, but to walk whole, not just to start again, but to start right, not just to recover what you lost, but to step into what you never even knew was possible. You've been waiting on a move of God, but what if the move of God is you? What if your obedience becomes the seed that shifts generations? What if your story becomes the door someone else walks through to meet Jesus? What if your pain births purpose in someone who thought they were beyond redemption? That's the anointing you carry. It's not flashy. It's not always visible, but it's real. It's in your voice. It's in your presence. It's in the way you love, even when you've been unloved. It's in the way you stay soft, even when life has tried to harden you. It's in the way you refuse to let bitterness build walls around your heart. That is power. That is purity. That is prophetic fire, born in silence. So let them wonder how you're still standing. Let them speculate how you're glowing after everything that's happened. Let them question your peace, your joy, your confidence. They didn't see the pruning. They didn't see the wilderness. They didn't hear the promises whispered to you in the dark. But you heard, you felt, you know. And that knowing is enough. It's your anchor when emotions rise. It's your compass when confusion tries to creep in. It's your quiet strength when the world goes loud. Because you're not just healed, you're holy. You're not just chosen, you're commissioned. You're not just called, you're sent. So take the next step. Even if your legs shake, even if your heart races, even if your mind whispers doubt, take the step anyway, because God blocked what was beneath you, so He could build what's about to carry you. He's building legacy. He's building generational restoration. He's building kingdom impact through your life. You're not a mistake. You're not too late. You're not too far gone. You're exactly where grace knew you'd be. And grace is still writing the next chapter. Chosen one, lean in. Because what I'm about to speak into your spirit is not from the noise of the world, but from the deep, still place where the voice of God still thunders and whispers. You didn't miss the promise. You were just in the process. The waiting wasn't wasted. The delay wasn't denial. The silence wasn't absence. And the no wasn't rejection. It was redirection from what could have cost you the very essence of who you are. You see, the enemy wanted you attached to things, to people, to outcomes, so he could drain you. But God wanted you anchored in truth, in Him, in eternal purpose, so He could send you. That's why the block was necessary, because some of the things you prayed for would have answered your desires, but aborted your destiny. And God loves you too much to give you what would ruin you. He knows the cost of a divided heart. He knows how easy it is to build an empire with no oil, a relationship with no reverence, a platform with no presence. So He stripped you down, not to shame you, but to shield you. He let the fantasy die so your faith could live. He let the door close so your discernment could rise. He let the people walk away so your worship could return to Him. Chosen one, you've been weeping over counterfeits, but heaven is preparing you for covenant. Covenant in relationships that nourish your soul, not drain it. Covenant in purpose that ignites your spirit, not just impresses others. Covenant in divine timing, where every piece clicks, not because of striving, but because of surrender. But you had to let go first. And I know letting go felt like death. I know you whispered through clenched teeth, "God, I thought this was it." I know you gave your all and watched it fall apart. I know you loved with a pure heart and were met with indifference. But none of it was wasted. Not the time, not the tears, not the trials. Because even when it looked like loss, you were gaining something greater. You were gaining spiritual muscles. You were gaining emotional maturity. You were gaining vision, clearer, cleaner, spirit-led vision that sees through things instead of just looking at them. That's why you don't fall for what others chase anymore. That's why the applause no longer intoxicates you. That's why silence doesn't scare you like it used to. Because you've been with God in the quiet. You've been with Him in the breaking. You've been with Him in the moments when the only thing holding you together was the whisper, "Keep going. I'm still with you." And you did. You kept going. You kept believing. You kept showing up. Even when it was just you and God, you refused to let go. That's why this next season belongs to you, not because you earned it, but because you endured for it. You didn't curse the pruning. You didn't flee the refining. You didn't harden your heart in the wilderness. You stayed open. You stayed soft. You stayed obedient even when it broke you. And obedience in the dark always leads to overflow in the light. You're stepping into that now, not as someone begging to be seen, but as someone sent. You are not waiting on favor. Favor has been waiting on you. It's been waiting on your character to catch up with your calling. It's been waiting on your healing to hold the weight of the harvest. It's been waiting on your spirit to mature enough to steward the increase. And now, the weight you carried will become the weight you carry. Glory, not grief. Chosen one, you're not who you were when this started. You've been forged in places most people would have broken. You've been awakened to levels most only talk about, and you've been entrusted with revelation not meant to be hidden. So don't hide. Don't minimize your fire to make others feel safe. Don't silence your oil to fit their comfort zone. You weren't chosen for convenience. You were chosen for impact, and impact requires risk. It requires courage. It requires stepping into rooms where your spirit speaks before your words do. Rooms where healing flows through your presence alone. Rooms where people don't even know what hit them. They just know they feel God when you're near. That's not ego. That's obedience. That's not pride. That's power. Spirit-given, fire-tested, heaven-backed power. Because the very thing you thought would destroy you was the very thing God used to distinguish you. So stop mourning the blocked doors. Start praising the God who shut them. And walk. Walk like the earth knows who you are. Walk like you've been in the throne room. Walk like rejection rolled off you because resurrection is on you. Walk like your identity is no longer up for negotiation. Walk like the one who called you is faithful to finish what he started, because he is. And you, chosen one, are not broken, you're becoming. Chosen one, take a deep breath right now, not just into your lungs, but into your spirit, because you're not who you used to be, and you're not going back to what God already rescued you from. That version of you, the one who tolerated less, who questioned their worth, who dimmed their light just to be chosen by those who could never carry your soul. That version is gone, buried beneath the ashes of closed doors and blocked pathways. And rising from those ashes is someone new, someone dangerous to darkness, someone who finally understands. If God blocked it, it was never meant to hold me. You were never supposed to stay in that room. You were never supposed to stay in that mindset. You were never supposed to stay in that version of yourself, that space of performing, of pleasing, of pretending. God had to strip it away, not to shame you, but to free you. Because chains don't always look like sin. Sometimes they look like comfort. Sometimes they look like connection. Sometimes they even look like answered prayers that aren't anointed for your future. And that's the test, isn't it? Can you still trust Him when He says no to something you prayed for in desperation? Can you still surrender when the outcome doesn't match your timeline? Can you still believe He's good when the blessing doesn't look like you imagined? That's what sets you apart. That's what makes you a chosen one. You've learned to praise in the hallway, not just the open door. You've learned to worship without a guarantee of tomorrow. You've learned to remain when others walked away. And because of that, you've been entrusted with weight, not the kind that breaks your back, but the kind that breaks chains. You speak now, and atmospheres shift. You pray now, and chains loosen. You walk into a room, and the Spirit testifies before you even say a word, because you've become an embodiment of what obedience in hiddenness creates. A weapon, a witness, a well of living water where others come to drink. But you had to thirst first. You had to be emptied. You had to feel what it's like to pour with nothing left, to give when you weren't receiving, to stand when everything told you to sit down. And now God is placing keys in your hands, not just for yourself, but for others. Keys to unlock hearts that have been locked by trauma. Keys to speak life where death has lingered too long. Keys to build something holy in the ruins of what was blocked, because you didn't waste the wilderness. You worshiped through it. You didn't curse the fire. You became fire in it. You didn't die in the delay. You discovered your voice in it. That's why you walk differently now. That's why you see differently now. That's why you don't just speak from intellect. You speak from oil. Oil that cost you comfort. Oil that cost you being liked. Oil that cost you an easy life. But oh, how precious it is now. Because what you carry is rare, and rare must be protected. Rare must be pruned. Rare must be blocked from anything that tries to treat it like it's common. That's why God didn't let it work. That's why the crowd didn't clap. That's why the door didn't open. Because it would have demanded you to dilute what He has distilled through pressure and purity. So, instead, He covered you. He kept you. He said, "Not this one. This one still has more growing to do, more glory to carry, more nations to reach." He said, "Not yet." And in that, "not yet," you found something stronger than answers. You found intimacy. You started leaning into His heart, not just His hand. You started wanting Him, not just what He could give. And now your steps are slower, but they're Spirit-led. Now your circle is smaller, but it's saturated in truth. Now your desires are clearer, not for things, but for presence. Chosen one, you're not behind. You're not late. You're not forgotten. You're being unveiled. Unveiled layer by layer, like a holy mystery finally stepping into alignment with its divine design. The world may not understand it, but heaven does. Hell fears it, and your spirit knows it. You're not who they left. You're not what you lost. You're not the version of yourself that cried for crumbs. You are royalty. You are righteous. You are rebuilt from the inside out. And what's coming? It won't feel like striving. It won't feel like begging. It won't feel like compromise. It will feel like rest. It will feel like reward. It will feel like redemption. Because this time, you're not arriving as the broken vessel desperate to be filled. You're arriving as the overflowing one, ready to pour. Chosen one. Do you feel it? The shift in the wind? The quiet assurance underneath the chaos? That's not coincidence. It's confirmation. Confirmation that what once shook you now sharpens you. Confirmation that what once wounded you now witnesses for you. The pain didn't win. The fire didn't consume you. The block didn't bury you. It birthed you. And now the world is about to witness the unveiling of someone who has been forged by divine fire and kept in the secret place for such a time as this. You are not emerging the same. You are emerging transformed. You are emerging focused. You are emerging unapologetically anointed. No more shrinking. No more explaining. No more trying to convince people of your worth when God has already called you worthy. Chosen one. The ones who overlooked you didn't understand the assignment you carry. You were never meant to be easily understood. You were meant to be spiritually perceived. And those who are not aligned with heaven's frequency will always misread your fire. But you were not created to fit in. You were created to ignite. You were created to expose what is false by simply being true, to silence what is chaotic by simply being still, to disrupt darkness, not with loudness, but with light. That's why the warfare has been so specific, because the enemy doesn't waste weapons on people without weight. He knew the block would confuse you. He knew you'd wrestle with your worth. He knew you'd question if God was still for you. But what he didn't count on was your worship in the wilderness, your praise with no proof, your yes with no map, your obedience when no one was watching. You kept choosing God, even when it felt like he was silent. You kept showing up in the Spirit, even when no one clapped. And that obedience in obscurity just unlocked a new realm, a deeper authority, a heavier oil, a wider reach, because what was done in private is now being honored in public, and not the kind of public that glorifies ego, but the kind that magnifies glory, the kind where your life becomes a message, where your presence becomes a prayer, where your healing becomes someone else's hope, where your scars sing louder than your sermons, because your walk speaks. It speaks of grace, of perseverance, of wisdom bought with tears. And now, it's speaking to dry bones, calling them to rise again. It's speaking to captives, reminding them of the chains you once wore, and now shatter with your story. It's speaking to the rejected, showing them that rejection doesn't mean disqualification. It means redirection. Chosen one, you are carrying too much fire to play small. You are carrying too much favor to stay silent. You are carrying too much glory to keep looking back. Let them wonder how you made it. Let them ask how you survived the crushing. You don't owe them an explanation. You are the explanation. You are the evidence that God still chooses the overlooked. You are the proof that broken vessels make the best altars. You are the sign that heaven places purpose in those the world throws away. So walk tall, walk with trembling if you must, but walk. Because what's on the other side of your obedience is revival. not just in buildings, but in homes, in hearts, in places where religion failed, but relationship will resurrect. And it begins with you. It begins with the yes you gave God in the dark. It begins with the faith you carried while crawling. It begins with the way you chose purity over popularity. And now, heaven is responding, not with noise, but with weight. Weight that makes hell nervous. Weight that shifts bloodlines. Weight that pulls others out of pits they thought were permanent. This is your legacy, chosen one, and it was worth every blocked door. Chosen one, let this truth settle deep in your soul. You were never denied. You were delayed for distinction. What didn't happen wasn't a loss. It was heaven's way of preserving the rare treasure within you from being mishandled by people who only recognized potential when it serves their platform. And that distinction, it comes with a weight, a holy weight, a weight that breaks you before it builds you, a weight that presses the oil out of places you didn't know could bleed. You see, God didn't choose you because you were loud. He chose you because you were listening. He didn't anoint you because you had the spotlight. He anointed you because you said yes in secret when no one was watching. While others were performing, you were pressing in. While others were building brands, you were building altars. And while others sought to be known, you sought to know Him. That's what makes you dangerous. You don't move for man's applause. You move when heaven speaks. And that obedience, that posture, that sacred rhythm between you and the Spirit is what has carried you here. So don't despise the delay. Don't mourn the things that passed you by. You were never meant to catch them. You were meant to be caught up in something greater, a movement, a mission, a mantle that only fits you because it was formed on your shoulders, formed when you stayed silent while others spoke against you, formed when you walked away from what was easy because you heard a deeper call, formed when you loved without condition and forgave without closure. Chosen one, that is strength. That is what makes heaven cheer and hell tremble, not the perfection, not the performance, but the posture of someone who's still standing after the storm, someone who's still loving after betrayal, someone who's still hopeful after heartbreak. And now, that posture is turning into position. God is positioning you in places where your voice will carry more than words. It will carry weight. It will carry freedom. It will carry answers. It will carry the atmosphere of heaven into boardrooms, bedrooms, churches, and cities. But remember, this is not about elevation for ego. This is about elevation for assignment. Because what you're stepping into isn't about your name, it's about His. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving that faithfulness still wins, that purity still has power, that obedience still opens doors no man can shut, that even in a world obsessed with shortcuts, the long way with God is still the right way. And yes, it was the long way. It felt endless. It felt lonely. But it taught you how to walk with God in the garden of obscurity. It taught you how to recognize His whisper in the wilderness. It taught you how to anchor your worth in His word, not their opinions. And now that you've tasted that depth, you can't go back to shallow. You can't go back to striving. You can't go back to places that require you to pretend just to belong. You've outgrown the performance. You've outgrown the pretense. You've outgrown the people who loved the mask, but never honored the mantle. That's why it ended. That's why God blocked it. Because He was never going to let you bury your brilliance in a place that couldn't handle your oil. He was never going to let your anointing be reduced to someone else's comfort. He was never going to allow your destiny to be domesticated. So He let it fall apart. He let them walk. He let the door close. And now He's opening better. Doors that don't demand your compromise. Rooms that don't silence your discernment. Connections that don't drain, but deposit. And this time, you'll recognize it. Because now you know how to discern. By fruit, not flattery. By spirit, not surface. By assignment, not attention. You're wiser now. Sharper now. Humbler now. And more dangerous to the kingdom of darkness than you've ever been. Chosen one, what's ahead of you isn't just an upgrade, it's an outpouring. An outpouring of revelation, an outpouring of divine rest, an outpouring of connections that align, affirm, and activate what God placed in you long ago. So stay rooted, stay ready, because when the door opens this time, it won't be like before. It won't require you to shrink. It won't demand you to earn it. It'll feel like home. Not because it's perfect, but because you're finally entering as your whole, healed, holy self. Chosen one, this is the moment your spirit has been aching toward. The final breath of a long battle. The stillness after the storm. The sacred hush that follows the fire. And in this space, this quiet, holy space, you finally realize God never abandoned you. He was blocking what was beneath you, so He could birth what was already inside you. You weren't being broken. You were being built. You weren't being ignored. You were being intentionally hidden, not because you had nothing to offer, but because the world wasn't ready for what you carried. Because your anointing was still maturing, because your spirit was still shedding the need for validation, because your voice had to be shaped in the silence before it could echo in the earth. Chosen one, everything you walked through was not to destroy you, it was to distill you, to extract every drop of oil, to refine your discernment, to root your identity so deeply in God that nothing and no one could uproot it again. You're not emerging from this journey as a victim. You're rising as a vessel that understands. Some doors were never closed against you. They were sealed for you. Some people didn't walk away to hurt you. They left so your light could breathe. Some seasons didn't end in failure. They ended in fulfillment of purpose. And now, you carry clarity. You carry power that doesn't need to prove. You carry humility that walks silently, but leaves a thunderous impact. You carry the fragrance of someone who's been in the presence of God and refused to leave empty-handed. This is your becoming, and your becoming will speak more than your striving ever did. No more begging for tables God never built for you. No more dancing for crumbs when you were born to serve bread. No more asking for signs. You are the sign, the evidence of what it means to walk through fire and come out glowing. The evidence of what it looks like when grace grips a person so deeply, the scars become sacred. You are proof that blocked paths lead to better plans. You are proof that delay can be divine. You are proof that silence can be strength. So go now, chosen one. Walk boldly, walk wisely, walk with wonder in your eyes and fire in your bones. Because what's ahead is not just restoration, it's recompense. The years the enemy thought he stole, God is redeeming them. The tears the world thought were wasted, God is turning them into rivers. And every no that broke your heart, God is repaying it with a yes that will heal generations. You've been faithful in the quiet. You've been purified in the pressing. Now get ready, because it's your time to pour. You're not returning to who you were. You're rising into who you were always meant to be. Set apart, spirit-led, fire-forged, heaven-backed, called, anointed, and deeply, deeply loved. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of the chapter where everything God blocked finally makes sense. And you, chosen one, are finally free to walk in it.